Well, what's up again there, guys? Brian here, the three topics came here to share with you another one of my worst to best ranking videos to share with you guys today. Now, at the time of this recording, I actually just got done with Ghost of Yotei, and I'm currently finishing up my review, which I hope to have out not long after I get this video up. But looking at 2025 as a whole, it was a pretty great year for gaming, at least for me. There were definitely a couple of stinkers, but for the majority of the year, I actually did play a very awesome collection of games, and I just thought it would be a fun idea if I did a worst to best ranking of all the games I played this year. So if you do happen to enjoy this video by the end, please do not forget to like, share, and subscribe. Keep tracking me on my future videos. And remember, if anyone who sees this has an idea for a future video you would like me to do, please let me know what your idea is in the comments down below, and I will try to get it up to you as soon as I can, as well as to give you a shout out. So, while wasting any more time, let's start off my ranking with what was without question the worst game that I played in 2025. Starting off with the worst game that I played this year, without question, has to go to Mindseye. There was a lot of negative rumors going into this game before it even came out. And then when the game eventually came out, it had so many technical problems at launch. But overall, the game's story was overly written to make it seem like it was smarter than it actually was. The gameplay was very, very outdated and hollow. I mean, the game tricks you into thinking like it's an open world exploration title when it really isn't. It makes sure that you stay on a specific path, and if you venture off from that path, then the game gives you an immediate game over. There were a number of game mechanics that were just frustrating and broken to work with. The only good things that I could say about this game is that, visually it was fine, and the performances from the actors was just fine. But the biggest reason I ended up really disliking this game was I think this is the first game that I can remember ever that I simply could not beat. Not just because I chose to quit, because I've done that on several occasions, but there was a technical bug that literally prevented me from progressing in the game. And no matter how many times I tried to reset the checkpoint, reset the chapter, and I damn sure wasn't dumb enough to try to reset the game from the very beginning, I literally could not progress forward. The game this bug was so bad, I could not progress forward. So because of that, I just didn't finish it just because of that. But to be fair, I think had I finished it, it probably still would have ended up being the worst game I played this year. So just because of all these issues, Mindseye was without question the worst game that I played in 2025. Taking the next spot has to go to Indiana Jones in the Great Circle. Now, this game originally did release on the Xbox last year, and it came out, I'd say, at the midpoint earlier this year for PlayStation. This was a game I actually had to wait until later on to actually get my hands on a copy of this game, so I was really excited to play it. But once I finally got my hands on it and started playing it, though the game started off well, it kind of ended up being a game that I eventually ended up quitting. What this game ended up being was pretty much Chronicles of Riddick, a game that came out, or technically the last one, which would be Assault on Dark Athena, which came out in 2009, but given an Indiana Jones paint job. And this game, at least for Indiana Jones, in my opinion, was way too stealthy. The best part of this game, at least in my experience, was definitely the beginning, which pretty much recreates the entire opening of Raiders of the Lost Ark. But past that point, it just wasn't a fun game. I didn't like the combat. I just hated how stealthy it was. And this went on for so long that I literally forgot, what the plot was. I don't even think I got deep enough in the game to even understand what the plot was about. And an all-out stealth style game is not really what I was expecting when I think of Indiana Jones. I would have expected something like Tomb Raider or Uncharted. And because of that, I ended up actually quitting this game after about 4 to 5 hours. But that 4 or 5 hours felt like 20 hours, and I just was not having fun with just everything that this game was presenting. I know that a lot of people really end up liking this game, and that's fine, but for an Indiana Jones game, this just was not what I was expecting or something that I found enjoying, which is why it takes the number 7 spot on my list. Taking the number 6 spot on my list is going to have to go to Gears of War Reloaded. Now, I actually did attempt to play the very first Gears game when I had a chance to play it 10 years ago when I bought my first Xbox, because I've always considered Gears to be like one of the big 3 main games on Xbox, similar to something like Forza or Halo. It's like that holy trinity that they had. So this was kind of the first one that I actually ended up testing out. And this time, though I was able to beat it, it ended up being a game that I think was okay, but did not make me a fan of this series. Now, I wasn't going to criticize this game for being outdated because this game did come out about 20 years ago. But I think the gameplay was fine. The story was kind of underwhelming to the point where I really couldn't get into the story or any of the characters. The villains, in terms of the locusts, were just not very interesting. They didn't have a predominant main antagonist that I thought was all that threatening. But the biggest flaw I think I had with this was that this game's AI, especially in the partner AI department, was really, really bad. It was the cause for the majority of my game overs, and I could tell clearly that this would have been a game that would have been better to experience had I had a friend to play with, for that reason. And on top of that, when I actually did try to play the multiplayer, which I know that most people were really excited for, I really just could not get into the multiplayer at all. I just did not have fun. So you had a combination of a not very fun multiplayer, the campaign being very basic and not fun to play with because I didn't have a actual partner to play with a somewhat underwhelming story and forgettable characters. Now I have been told that future other games Gears are better than this one, but as this is like my real first main introduction into the franchise, it just didn't leave a very great impression. As I had tried to beat this 10 years ago and I couldn't. I was able to beat it now and I still really wasn't all that impressed, which is why Gears of War Reloaded, now that it's finally on the PlayStation, has to take the number 6 spot on my list. Taking number 5 spot on my list has to go to Black Myth Wukong. Much like Indiana Jones, this technically is a game that came out last year, but I didn't get a chance to play it till this year. And I got pretty deep into Black Myth Wukong. I put about well over 20 hours into this game. But this did end up being a game that I did eventually end up quitting. It simply got to a point where I think the bosses, there was one particular boss that I just thought was a bit too difficult for me to actually beat. And I just didn't think the story for me was told in a way that I thought it was strong enough for me to really want to continue. So those two factors was the reason I didn't end up finishing this game. But what I did end up experiencing in those first 20 hours was really, really good. I did think the customization, I did think the challenge factor was really good. The music was absolutely fantastic. Visually, it was a fun game. Had a lot of great energy. Combat was really spectacular. There's a number of customization elements. And just exploration. The exploration was really fantastic in this game. I just really wish that there was a strong enough story. Like in those 20 hours, the story was just being told in a way that made it hard for me to really get invested into the story. And for me, I'm a story-driven gamer. So a game could have like the worst graphics, the worst gameplay, the worst everything. But if there's a strong enough story, that's enough to push me through. And unfortunately, I just didn't find that the case with Black Myth Wukong. Had it had a simpler way of explaining its story that was a lot more interesting, I probably would have wanted to keep going to find out what more would happen to my character in the legendary story that this game is presenting. But that's ultimately what kept me from finishing it. So along with a really, really difficult boss fight. So that's why I felt like putting Black Myth Wukong in the 5th spot on my list. Taking the number 4 spot on my list has to go to Assassin's Creed Shadows. Now, Assassin's Creed Shadows, in terms of its environment setting, has been something that the fan base has wanted for the longest time. We have been begging to get an Assassin's Creed game set in feudal Japan, and we finally got one. And despite all the controversy that was surrounding this game, it still ended up being an absolutely fantastic game. I had a blast with Assassin's Creed Shadows, so much so that I even went out of my way to get to the collector's edition. And so the controversy just didn't bother me. I thought the gameplay style was a perfect mix of the old school style when you're playing as the shinobi and the kind of updated, straightforward action style of some of the later games like Origins or Valhalla or Odyssey. So I liked the different blends in gameplay style, and it allowed you to choose what style of combat or gameplay you want to focus on. I thought the story was absolutely fantastic. I really enjoyed it. I've gone back several times to replay this game. Visually, it was impressive. Exploration was fine. Combat was fine. Customizations, upgrades, everything that you could expect in an Assassin's Creed game is here, and it is excellent. And to me, it's easily a top 5 favorite Assassin's Creed game of all time. And now that we actually have a game set in feudal Japan, this might actually end up being the last Assassin's Creed game that I end up playing, because I really cannot think of a better location you could have set it than feudal Japan. And now that we finally have it, I really just don't see what more the franchise could provide me with, unless they want to like remake Black Flag, which I would be totally up for. If I had any real flaws with it, I just think they could have done more of some of the extra characters in the story. The story that is presented is very, very good, and there's definitely a lot of dynamics. I just felt like some of the characters could have been fleshed out a little bit more. I think the connections to other Assassin's Creed games that they do attempt to put could have been a little bit stronger, because they do actually do mention events from other games, but I just wish that they'd been more prominent. And I just wish that the presence of the actual conflict was stronger. They really don't go in depth with the conflict between the assassins and the Brotherhood. It's kind of in the background. It tells a very, very basic revenge story, but it just kind of feels like that conflict, the aspects of the assassin and the Brotherhood, those elements are kind of slapped on the end. If you actually took those elements out, you would get a very, very basic revenge story. And I just think that's the primary flaw that this game has, is that its connections to the actual conflict that bring these characters together just isn't very strong when compared to primary entries in the franchise. And I would say that's probably its biggest flaw. But beside that, this is still a fantastic game. I had a great time with Assassin's Creed Shadows, and it is absolutely worthy of taking the number 4 spot on my list. Taking the number 3 spot on my list has to go to Doom: The Dark Ages. Now, going into 2025, this was easily my most anticipated game of this year. And while it isn't the best game that I played this year, I thought Doom: The Dark Ages was absolutely fantastic. It might be, on a technical and story sense, my favorite Doom entry in this new era of Doom. I think this new era of Doom that started in 2016 has been fantastic. In fact, we've had 3 amazing entries. We now have a complete trilogy of like modern Doom games, which I would say is definitely a major upgrade in terms of the original set of Doom games that came out in the 90s, and I would say even early 2000s. I thought the story went more in depth with the Doomslayer's background and his story and his kind of connections to the world. The weapon collection was absolutely fantastic. Level design was great. I was actually able to platinum this game. I didn't experience a few technical issues, but those did end up getting fixed with patches. Yeah, this was just a very, very fun first-person shooter game. I absolutely love the faster pace that Doom provides. If the game had any real flaws, in my opinion, I would say just the music. I don't think the music was as strong as it was in Doom 2016 and Doom Eternal. That's probably its biggest flaw. But apart from that, this was just an absolutely fantastic game, and I'm sad that I didn't get the collector's edition. I absolutely would have wanted to get it. But yeah, this easily could be in my top 10 favorite first-person shooter games of all time, and I really hope I eventually go back and replay this game, because it was absolutely fantastic. I love that it kind of placed it in like a prequel setting, and I thought that dynamic was absolutely fantastic, which is why it takes the number 3 spot on my list. Taking the number 2 spot on my list has to go to Ghost of Yotei. Despite all the controversy that was built around this game when it was first announced, now that I've finally had a chance to actually play this game, Ghost of Yotei is a fantastic game, and I think all the criticism could really be dismissed by anyone who's a fan of Ghost of Tsushima and actually goes into this game with an open mind. It tells a very, very different story than what we got with Jin in the first game. And I think the best aspect of this game is that it feels so familiar in a different environment. Everything that you liked, everything that you experienced in the first game in terms of a gameplay aspect is brought here. It's just expanded upon and slightly modified to give it its own identity. And that I thought was very, very encouraging and something I was happy to see. Story-wise, I think the story is a little bit better than what we get in Ghost of Tsushima, mainly because I think they do a little bit more with the protagonist. She certainly has a lot more dimensions. She at no points is woke or feels like a boss babe of any kind. This is a fully realized character that goes through a series of events that has multiple effects on her personalities and her decisions throughout the game. And I think that the antagonist this time around is a little bit better, because my biggest problem with Ghost of Tsushima was that it just had a very weak and one-dimensional villain. And while none of the villains in and this one, in terms of the Yotei 6, are given as much time to develop. I think what they do with them with the time you were given is significantly better than what we got with the con. And this is just a fun game. It was a blast to play through this game. It was a visually beautiful game. I loved how it used the DualSense controller as well as it did. There's a number of fun activities. There's a number of great side missions. There's plenty of characters to interact with. A lot of really entertaining moments, and the music is absolutely fantastic. I don't think it's a massive improvement over Ghost of Tsushima, but it does do enough to give it the slight edge in my opinion. And it would have been a serious strong contender for my game of the year. But as it stands right now, it really just holds the number 2 spot on my list. But still a very, very fun game. Taking the number 1 spot, and my personal choice for my game of the year has to unquestionably go to Death Stranding 2 on the Beach. Now, I went into this game with a bit of a hesitation because while I certainly did enjoy the very first Death Stranding game, I did acknowledge that it wasn't necessarily a fun game to go through. And while the story by the end did end up being really, really compelling, it was a very, very slow burn, and it really didn't start getting good until like the last third. So going into the game, all I wanted was for Kojima to provide a better game that had a stronger fun factor and was a lot more faster pace of its story. And he absolutely delivered. Now, as opposed to something like Ghost of Yotei that took all the elements of his first game and made only slight improvements, Death Stranding 2 took every single aspect of the first game and made massive improvements. Every single aspect of everything that this game provides is vastly improved upon. The travel mechanics, greatly improved upon, and despite the fact that its primary gameplay is set on delivering packages from one spot to another or transferring resources from one spot to another, there's other aspects of it that give it a lot more dimensions and therefore a lot more fun to do. The boss fights in this game are certainly some of the best that I've played all year. This is without question the best looking that I've played this year, with acting performances across the board being absolutely A tier. This game is going to be a heavy hitter at this year's VGAs. The story element is so much moved at a faster pace than it was in the first game, and there's so much more in depth that it was just an absolutely fantastic story to go through. It was a great thing to see that Kojima had listened to his fans and make the proper improvements over the first game to really bring a truly incredible experience that I had this year. I just can't say enough about this game. There's very few things about it that I thought were still flawed, especially with its core gameplay. But like, if anyone was kind of hesitant about the first game, then they should definitely go into this second game with a lot of anticipation, because it really was the kind of massive improvement that we like to see in our sequels. And out of any game that I played this year, when it came to true sequels, this game made the biggest amount of improvement over the first game. And this is definitely something I do plan on going back and platinuming when I have time. But yeah, without question, Death Stranding 2 is my game of the year and the best games I played in 2025. And that concludes my list of the worst 2 best games that I played in 2025. Now, if you yourself have actually managed to finish all the games you plan to play in 2025, I would love for you to share how you guys would rank your games that you played in 25 and share your list with me and everyone else in the comments down below. And like always, I want to thank you guys for watching. You're awesome, and I will catch you guys next time.